Today we're going to talk about saturation in modern metal, and as you can see in the introduction I've just pushed up there, I've got 3 different types of saturation that I'm using on this particular mix, and this is a track that's getting close to me releasing on Spotify and all the common streaming services. I'm quite happy with it, nice and heavy, nice and punchy, but I've just been refining it somewhat. And as you see at the start there, I pulled up 3 different instances of saturation. We're going to go through these in turn today. So number 1 is Filter Saturn 2, a really versatile tool, different modes of saturation you can see there. We're not going to cover all of these today, we're just going to give a quick demo of how they sound. You've got the drive, different frequency bands. You can, like all the other FabFilter products, change what's kind of where you want to employ it. You can add multiple bands, etc. But we're going to go real basic on this. So I'm just going to undo that and go back to that. So Saturn is one of them. Another one is just a nice and easy SSL native on the guitar bus, just a form of saturation there, and we just push the drive amount up and just adjust the mix levels. Nice and simple, adds a nice bit of character to the mids. And then lastly, I've got it on the drums after compression, which is adding its own type of saturation because it's an analog emulation. I've got JST's heat, and again I'm just applying this across, not using multi-band like that. As you can see, you can do it. I've just basically driven it up from the default mode, just pulled it up until I'm happy with it and left it on auto gain. So let's go to let's get the drums first. So let's in fact, let's quickly listen to the mix again, and then I'll turn all the saturation off and we'll see if we can hear the difference. Okay, Vox saturation. I'm going to turn the Vox saturation off now. Guitar bus saturation off. Drum saturation off. And then on my mix bus I've got one final one that I didn't mention, which is a Black Box Audio HG2MS, which is you can see it's got a pentode and triad valve based saturation. We turn that off and we end up with this. Interesting, right? So just to highlight from the start, I do top-down mixing. So as soon as I start tracking, I add the limiters, compressors and things here on the master side, and I start working backwards. So there is an element of truth. If you now take these all off, it doesn't completely give transparent results as to where the mix would have been, because it's all been rebalanced in reverse. So taking them out obviously undoes the character of the previous items. So let's have this main one back in, and we'll come back to that in a second. So I'm just gonna, that's that one back in on the master. So let's visit, what do we say? Let's put them all back in so I don't get confused where I'm at. Let's visit the, for me, probably the drums is the most obvious. Let's get the drums. So this is the drums without any saturation type activity on. Okay, and just for visibility, what we've got drum-wise on there is the Superior Drummer 3, and I've got the Progressive Foundry on there, as you can see. So that's that, and the particular preset is Attack. It's just one of the defaults there, and I've tweaked some of the cymbals and some of the levels myself, different snare and all that kind of thing. So let's put the compressor on. So a lot of people might just raise the volume of these. So this is actually at -10 in my overall mix, you can see there. But so what I do is add this compressor, which is a Shadow Hills compressor. So this is, I'll turn it on and off so you can see the difference. So this is an analog emulation of a compressor. So with the valves and things, they generally add saturation and nice harmonics on top. So if you're interested, by all means, have a look at these settings I've got and things on there. So you've got quite a moderate attack, and on the dual mode on the Shadow Hills there, you've got it'll respond to very quick transients and levels, but also maintain some of the character as well. So it's quite a nice mode that's specific to this unit, I believe. So let's turn it on and off. Okay, this is going on. So you can listen to the snare in particular, is where I hear it. So you've got a nice clear snare, but when you add this in, okay, so that's adding some of that crack and that massiveness that we expect in modern metal. So you can use these Superior Drummer packs out of the box, but I think if we're looking at going that extra step, then we generally would do some more. So let's add in JST heat. So listen out for that snare. But let me pull the graphic up so you can keep an eye on the snare. Let's have the snare. Okay, so JST heat is going on now. Off. Okay, so do make sure you're listening to this on a decent system or some solid headphones. Ideally, not your kind of your ones that come with your phone, for example, some decent monitoring headphones or a full range system, so you can hear those mids and things nice and clearly. So you can hear, if you listen to the snare, that's it now on. It comes a bit more forward. So what we've got there on the JST Heat. So this is a very good plugin. I think it's one of the best that they've ever done, apart from for me, Howard Venson vocals. So you can see it's multi-band, but all I'm doing is left it at default. So if you look at the level, that's at 24% of that particular mode, just a touch. That's all we're after, because we've already got the compression thing doing its bit. So let's dial that back and then dial it forward. So that's it off. We can slowly push it through. Listen to that snare. We dial it back. And push it forward. Let's keep pushing. So this does have a nice auto gain feature. So what I'm not looking to do is completely change the character of it. I just want to push it a bit. So I ended up on about 23, 24-ish. So I'll put that back in the mix. So this is all we've done with this, but you can see there are loads of different types of presets. For bass, for guitars, for vocals, for drums. And these are quite extreme, some of these. Like you can see, destroy your snare, just a drum bus, that kind of thing. So if I dial it back again, off. In fact, that's truly off. So listen to it come forward again. Let's add it in. Makes it a bit bigger there. So the real test is, let's put it back in the mix. So if we've got the drums again, let's just get this out of the way. So we've got our drums here. Let's turn it off and unsolo it, and let's just re-add JST Heat back in again, that plug-in here. Okay, going in. Going off. Going on. So I can feel that the low end and the click of the kick and the snare become much more forward. And we haven't really done too much. We've just added a little bit of heat to it. It is called JST Heat. So that makes sense. So again, let's turn the compressor off. Because it's an analog emulator, it will add saturation, the nice overtones that we want. And if we turn off the heat as well, this is the drums on their own. That in. Now let's turn that on. Okay, so our drums are really now planted fully forward, and you would do this sort of thing after you've already adjusted the levels, to be clear. So you get the levels right, do all your EQing and things like that, and then add these saturations, just like the final touches. Okay, let's move on to another instrument. Let's go to our guitar bus. So I'll do it in the mix again, and then we'll take it off and see if you can hear the difference. And the guitars are the really nuanced difference, because in heavy metal, the guitars are really heavily compressed due to the nature of the high gain and the simulated valve tone coming through the Fender Toemaster Pro, the boost pedals, all the other bits they've got going on. So you don't really need to compress too heavy in that, although I have, because it adds that saturation, that extra layer you're after. So on this, what we'll do is we'll turn on and off the SSL plugin, which is this one here, the saturator. And I've picked a particular plugin, a default, sorry, I should say, and it's the Rox Mix Saturator. So it's on here, and it's, which one is it? That one there. I've just picked a default, and I've just increased the amount of drive to taste. Okay, so let's play it through, and then let's turn it off and see if you can hear it. On the guitar. Off. Okay, let's hear them on their own then, see if you can notice the difference. So it's just a slight push forward, just a slight, because you've got the vocals occupying that really intelligible area that our ears are sensitive to. The guitars are going to slightly fight for that. I've done some unmasking and other bits, but just to give them a little bit of a nudge after all the work that we've done. Let's have a listen to that. So just the guitars now. So listen carefully as I turn it off. It's going off. It comes down a bit here. Back on. Nice and forward, and then back off. So again, we could drive this all the way, so we're at 0.9. So you can drive it quite hard. That's probably as high as you can get without actually distorting. So you can go for nothing, or you can pull it back. So if you go back to the preset that we had, 0.9 there. So all I did, I think, from the default was just increase the mix a little bit. There we go. So we put that back in. You can hear that it's having an impact, and certainly if you push it hard, you could go all the way. But it just pushes it a little bit forward, so you think the guitar's got its own tone. It's just added a few more bits of that harmonic content. As you can see on screen here, as you pull up the amount of harmonics there, it moves from second to third order. So you've got, just say your fundamental is 100, the first order would be 200, then 400, then 800. It adds more and more harmonic content down the line. So this is a nice simple plugin from SSL, and I think it's really good. So let's one more time. Turn it off. The guitars drop back really far. Go back in. Sit with that start section. On, off and on again, one more time. They're on. And off. They're still there, and they're equally as loud. They're just not enough saturation there, so we just push them a bit more. Okay, so that is SSL's saturation. So lastly, the vocal bus. So the important thing with this is everything is in context with the mix. So what we have is the vocal bus, so all the bits and bobs of vocals there. So this one is nearly finished, but not 100%, I would say. So let's listen to it in context again, and let's add on and off the saturation. So vocals this time, guys. Okay, going off. And back on. And going off. And back on. Okay, so let's just listen to that in isolation, see what we've done there. So what we've got is Fab Filter's Saturn there. I've just left it on default, I think, and literally pulled up a bit of drive there, 44. And then when I got to a happy point, to get the level rather than adding more distortion or saturation, because this can quite easily end into distortion with this one. So again, you've got lots of modes. So if you've got a clean tone, like a bass guitar, you could turn it into a distorted bass guitar, that kind of thing, and you can do amp emulations. But for saturation specifically, it's a couple. I've gone for heavy because we're talking heavy metal vocals. And you see a lot of guys use this sort of thing because even though the vocals sound really gristly and you've got the fry and the false chord stuff going on, in the mix, when you add this on, it doesn't necessarily turn it from choir boy into heavy metal. It just adds a bit more. It just packs it out a bit more. So let's hear it in isolation here. So let's hear the vocals. Okay, so you can hear just on the back end, so like funky distortion stuff going on. So let's turn it off and listen to it again. Let's put it back in. So that is it's quite a deep screamy thing going on, but when you put it on, it's like more is more, as Ingrid Malmsteen says, more is more. So we put it on and it sounds filthy with it on, doesn't it? So that top end of that almost distortion that's coming through in the mix, so on its own I don't like that, but in the mix it doesn't sound bad. So it just adds more folding of the tone. And if we listen to it again with it off, and then we'll put it on. So I think there's a heavier section here. Turn it off. So let's do that little section there. Let me listen to that in solo. So we've got that. That sounds pretty filthy. Then we turn it off. So personally, I like the sound of it in isolation with it off, but in the mix, it's adding more without actually making the track louder by adding that extra harmonic content, and it blends it more with the guitars and things. So it fills a bit more space. So you can hear my vocals. There's a couple of layers there. There's a high one and a lower guttural one, and it just fills out. When you distort or add saturation to these both, it just really kicks the nuts out of it. And when you add it to your mix, it sounds massive. So let's add that back in again. Set it off. Put it back in. Okay, so that is, we've done drums and we've done vocals. What else have we done? What else have I got it on? So we've got JST Heat, we've got Saturn, we did the guitar bus, we've done the Vox bus, so we've done 3 now. So lastly, what we've got for me, saturation-wise, is on the actual master here, on the main. Whatever you want to call it, your 2 bus, your stereo bus, your main bus, your mix bus, whatever. Same thing, it's the final output, it certainly is for me in this stage. And so if I put this mix on again, just from the start again, just put this little section on, and then we turn that one off. This has the biggest impacts on the mix, and everything that we've saturated before will then be further saturated by this one again. So if we put this one on, and this has a really big impact on the mix because I've saturated the mid and the sides slightly differently. So for the mids, let me solo that. You can hear my particular frequency down here is pretty low. If I remember how to do it on this particular plugin, yeah, 136. So the low end, just above the sub stuff. So it's normally small speakers, you'd still hear it. So we've got that on there. Not sure if I nudged it accidentally. Yeah, I did. So then we turn it off. If I was to turn that off, bypass that. So a lot of that low end falls out now. Put it back in. Okay, let's do the same on the sides now. So the sides is going to be higher frequencies. The mids is all your mono stuff, your bass guitar, your kick drum, your toms, and any instrument that's low, because everything has been sent to the master bus, so it's not on its own channel now. This is on the master, so everything that has low frequency, and you determine where that is. So for me, I've said 136, 140, whatever it is, that's where my mid is. That's the content I'm looking at. So for my sides, I'm looking at, in this one in particular, and I try not to move it, was it 8? God, I can't read that from any of my glasses. Well, what are we looking at? So that is, we've got certainly a center frequency of 8.7. So if we solo that, let's listen to what that is in solo. Okay, let's put that back in. And let's do it again, let's bypass it. Okay, interesting, that sounds a lot cleaner, but you're missing the width now because it's on the sides, all those frequencies. So that being the sat frequency, but the Q is almost nominal there. So you can have a really wide Q or moderately wide Q where it's not affected just that. You can have your 6K, a bit of 10K, maybe even wider. And we've got the fact that we're adding saturations. It's not an EQ, it's saturations. So you're going to add your first, your second, your third order harmonics. So depending on how much of the pentode and the triad you add, all that kind of stuff. So it's not just you're surgically altering that particular frequency. I've just swept it until I like the sound of it, and then I've increased the saturation amount. So if we listen to that again, bypassed and pull it back in. Put it in. How big does that get? Let's take it out. Let's take that out. So that's how it sounds without the whole mix saturated. It sounds pretty good, but it's just not enough. Okay, that's in. That's the low frequency, or the mid. And now the side. Okay, so that's it. So let's put them on screen quickly. So the HG2MS is definitely a go-to for me. If you're looking at this video or you've seen any of my other videos, this is one of my, it's going to be used on all the stuff that you're hearing me do. That's there. That is a staple for my mix bus there. Right, so for vocals, I'm probably using this one because this is quite a complex plugin and I'm not really using the full utility of it yet. I might do. But for vocals, I'm using Saturn 2, like as you can see there. Let's shrink that because it's pretty enormous. And it's good that you can scale this actually, make it big and small and whatnot. So we've got that, and we've got the SSL native that we're using on the guitar bus, because then the guitars are already heavily distorted and heavily saturated for just through the instrument content that they go through, the valves and emulation and stuff like that. They're meant to sound saturated, but we've just pushed them a bit more. So this is in mixed content too. This is on their own. So if you're playing a guitar on your own in your room, you don't need to be saturating and doing this stuff. It's how you can make the mix sound as good as you can. So we've got that. And then finally on the drum bus, I'm using JST Heat. Again, just cranking it up a little bit. You could probably do the same for this. There's probably a preset, let's have a look, for drums or something like that. And I believe I will have tested it. Just the particular character, there's a snare one, there's something like that. So there will be, but I've particularly liked the sound of the one that I've got, you know, the sound I'm getting from JST Heat. So that's music. So we've got 4 different types of saturation there, all have the different uses. If I could recommend any 2, it would probably be the HG2MS first, and then the Heat from JST, and the rest of them are just nice utility ones, but you could probably get the same sound from the others. So hope that's been useful. So if I again turn all the saturation off in this mix, and let's see, again, I've top down mixed, so it won't fall apart necessarily. If you've got to remember the order that I've made this mix in. So we turn these all off, and then we get back to how the mix sounded. Let's add the mix one back in. Let's get vocals back in. They're coming forward. Let's get the guitars back in. Drums are coming out. Let's get the drums in. So hopefully that's been of use to you, and we're getting very close to pushing out almost a side A of a longer EPR album. I think there's going to be, like, I wouldn't say Alpha Omega because that's been termed a lot, but certainly there's going to be a side A and a side B as the material is becoming, from my perspective, heavier, more visceral, and more how I want it to be. So with that in mind, I shall end this one there, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching, guys.